What is going on, ladies and gentlemen? I'm BLM, coming with my buddy J4Y, bringing you episode number 69, wink, of our DoD podcast. I sure hope I counted that up right.
You really didn't. 67.
God, no.
You wish it was 69. Your brain is going elsewhere tonight, I'm afraid.
Oh, no. I've ruined it all.
He's ruined it, folks. Sorry.
60.
Well, you know what? Let's just do 69 tonight and come back and do 67, 68 later. I mean, why not, you know?
I like it. I mean, you know, I kept the streak alive for so long. I guess I have to start
69 is the new 67, I heard. So, it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Don't ask me how the... Anyway. Yeah, what's going on, man?
What's going on? Let's see. Not much.
It's late.
It's
Can we
late.
say that?
It is late. We'll give you that. We all will. It's about 10 o'clock we're starting this cast because we decided if we didn't do it now, it was just not going to get done. There's holidays and shenanigans going up in the next few weeks. I believe BDLM is cooking like 20 meals tomorrow or something, so you got to give him credit here.
20 to 30. Yeah, in the good old US of A, it is Thanksgiving tomorrow. And so, yeah, like you said, we want to try and get this cast out before the holiday, and a great time to shout out to all you people who have tuned in live, who listen in every week to listen to me butcher the intro, in this case, and, you know, have just been with us for a long time. We are very thankful to all of you guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. Tonight we have a pretty awesome episode. We're going to talk a little bit about the cosmetic changes to some of the heroes and the name changes to a couple in particular, and then actually talk about the final series for MLG Columbus between DK and Speed Gaming. So, you know, those were really cool games. A lot of really neat choices to happen in those, so it'll be a lot of fun to talk about. Let's get started with the skins, man. How about you give us what has happened?
Well, first of all, this also relates to Ramser, who posts on our YouTube. And one of his questions was, what's your take on the Wind Ranger Rage? So, what he's talking about here, there was a few heroes that got name changes due to Blizzard nonsense and shenanigans. And then there was some model updates. The most notable model update, of course, is the Venomancer, who looks... It's like Medusa and a snake and... Well, I guess Medusa has snakes, so that doesn't really make sense. But I don't even know what to make of this new guy. He definitely looks more like venomous, and I kind of like how it reminds me of like one of the I don't remember what they're called, like the dinosaurs in Jurassic Park where they spit venom, or maybe it's a lizard I'm thinking of. Either way, well, lizards are dinosaurs, but yeah, exactly. They expand out and they spit the venom. It kind of reminds me of that, and I kind of like that aspect. But I know you had some thoughts on this for sure.
I hate his little flappy arms.
Tentacle monsters.
They're just like, I mean, it's a great improvement, and actually, you know, when Dota 2 was first getting off the ground, I remember, you know, just reading around and people that were commenting on the art, it's like, oh, it looks cartoony, and it looks like, and Venomancer, I think before was a really good case for that, of like, it kind of looks like a little, I don't know, just like cute and cuddly for a super venomous, you know, killing machine. I actually have to say that at first I was like, this is neat, I kind of like it, and now I'm actually digging the new updated skin.
It's
quite
grown
a
on
bit.
Me. It's grown on me.
Yeah, and he's got the like little balls of poison in his whatever this is, the
thing expands, which we can't have a name for apparently, but
no.
He's also like bigger too. He's definitely like a bigger model in general because of the expansion of the arms and the whatever wings. I don't know what we want to call them, but whatever that thing is that's expanding out. So he's like you say, he's just more kind of intimidating and more just like of a, not just like like another tree or something. Like, you know, he is actually like very recognizable, very unique now. Doesn't look anything like a Hydralisk from the StarCraft series. So it's I think it's an overall great direction for sure. And I think, like we were saying, it's just it kind of grows on you once you start like playing with it and seeing it in action. Yeah,
and it's kind of just playing off of the update to Storm Spirit and stuff. So it's neat that we're getting to see all these the upgrades to the Art of Heroes, and of course there are probably some other ones who could use some work, and you know, heroes who have gotten changed over time. So it's nice that they're continuing to go back and step that up, even though they have, you know, the community for large part making skins for their heroes, you know. It also everybody went Super Saiyan
Yes.
this patch. I don't know if anybody else realized the amount of just like explosion hair that happened. Dazzle's got like this beautiful ponytail thing streaking off the back of his hair, back of his head. Axe got too close to an explosion, and his hair is just like crazy. But you know, everybody got, or not everybody, but several heroes got at least a little bit of a change. And man, if you find a way to complain about any of them, I mean, I feel like
they're touching up on them, which is really nice. It's good to see that they're already coming back and doing that. The things that the rage in which Ramsor was talking about, the name changes. So Necrolite changed to Necrophos, Windrunner changed to Wind Ranger, and Lycanthrope changed to just Lycan. So the biggest one that people probably are upset with is the Wind Ranger, and that's probably mostly because she's the most popular of the three heroes changed anyways in the pro scene and most recognizable. The only thing that's decent is that it's still WRs and initials, but that's about as close as we can get. And you know, especially in MLG and other tournaments I've been watching, they still call her Windrunner by accident, and I can't blame them. I mean, it was such a sudden change, and when you called someone that hero for I don't know, 6 years or something when you're casting these games, I can't blame people for still not being, you know, it's just like Furion that was what they called Nature's Prophet. You know, it's going to take a little transition, but I mean, it's just something we're all going to have to deal with because we'd rather not Valve lose a ton of money to a Blizzard lawsuit, let's be honest.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that they have to keep going back and changing these things, and hopefully, you know, they don't run into too many problems in the future. I mean, I just know from trying to look at the unreleased hero stuff, and just like they've had to change the name of what they were going to call Pit Lord a lot because of that being a thing from the Warcraft.
He's got a completely different name now.
Yeah, he's Pyre Lord, now he's Abyssal Underlord, and who knows what he's going to release as.
Outworld Devourer next. I mean, God knows. It's but yeah, I mean, none of these were like game-changing models. I mean, game-changing. Well, you know what I mean. They weren't like doing anything really to the scene. It was just updates visually and name-wise. So, you know, let us know what you guys think. Honestly, I'm curious what you guys think about these new models and names, especially the Venomancer. I'm curious what everyone else thinks about these tentacles and whatnot.
Whoa. There's another actual question by Ramster4. He gave us a couple. What's your favorite spirit, Jay? Of the three, we never.
Of the three, that's true. There is three, and I would have to say it's probably the Earth Spirit now. After playing with him so much, just how versatile he is, his different roles, and his different combinations, and his OP silence. I think I have to go with the Earth Spirit as far as like gameplay and how like I like him in the game. Ember Spirit's the most fun for me to play, but it's probably because he's a carry, and that's more fun to me to play. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I like Earth Spirit. Fire Spirit, I might like.
Ember.
Oh, sorry.
Please call him the right name.
I can't. It's late. I can't help it. I'm just not on the ball today. I haven't had enough.
Blizzard's gonna sue you. You better watch what you're saying. All right.
Ember Spirit, I really like that he has that interaction that we kind of tried to make a big point out of last week, and the orb effects being really important because of how Sleight of Fist can apply all those things. Yeah. But you know, Storm Spirit is like this hero that we've had for a really long time, and he's managed to be a part of the metagame for a really long time. Maybe not super prevalent for a while, but you know, has sort of popped in here and there, and he's always put on a good show. So I don't know. He's obviously going to be the one we're least excited about because we've had him as a part of the game for forever. He might be my favorite. He's got that warm place in my heart, being a crazy little guy just bouncing around.
That's true. And he's lost a lot of weight, so I gotta give him credit for that. He's done
a
great job keeping it off so far for the week he's been on it or whatever. So it's nice.
It's really amazing that he ever had a weight problem to begin with how much he moves around.
You'd think, but well, it's kind of like taking an escalator instead of the stairs. Like he just kind of ball lightning instead of walking. It's like he actually never has to do any exercise if you think about it. So that's why he put on all the weight. You know.
That's true. Well, we're glad he slimmed down. As far as MLG Columbus goes,
and let's just talk about quickly the event before we actually talk about the best of threes, because I mean I didn't get to watch a whole ton of it, but I have to say from what I've seen, and the reaction from the community on Reddit and different various things, people loved it. Like, absolutely loved how they did everything. Apparently, Mr. Adam, or whatever, the guy who was like kind of coordinating everything, did a fantastic job. I got to watch some of the reviews. Actually, shout out to Mott, who was one of the guys talking in the group with all the pro players and stuff. So I just want to give him a shout out. You know, guy's been on our cast. But anyways, but it really seemed pretty smooth. It definitely wasn't like up at TI3 quality. I mean, let's get real here. It was also much less funding going into it than TI3 was. So and it was their first event. You know, so we got to kind of all compile that on there. But they're absolutely interested in doing more events, and it just went so well, so smooth, and the crowd was getting so into it. I mean, it really seemed like a mini version of a TI3, and I think it was a great idea. And also, I want to get your opinion on did you ever hear the Turtle Beach team chat going on?
I did. I did get to hear a little bit of that, and I'm not sure what I thought about it. It was neat. I kind of found it surprising for some parts because I expected them to be saying more. But I guess when you play together all the time, you don't necessarily have to verbalize as much. You kind of know what the game plan is, and especially when you're at that level, you obviously don't need to be communicating every little piece of information. But it was really neat to just get that different view of the game. And you know, it was unfortunate, I think, because for some of us, I seem to remember one time where there was like stuff happening and we're like listening to them, but they weren't really saying anything. It's like, all right, let's throw it back to the casters.
Yeah, right.
What's going on here? Like, okay.
Yeah, like the dead silence or something at times.
Land the shot. Okay, let's go in.
And then it's like 20 seconds of silence while everything's blowing up everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. It's like dead silence. There's like, go view, go view, go view, go view, go view. Ah! You know, and then, like, if you did one of those for like us and our friends playing, it'd be like every 10 minutes it'd be like, can someone buy wards and keep getting ganked? And that would be pretty. Can we push? Hold on, I'm like 1,000 gold off my BKB. Hold on, I'm just gonna farm a little bit more. Okay.
20 more minutes. That's it. That's all we need.
Yeah, but I thought it was pretty neat. And for those people who don't know, basically they just kind of turned the mics on for players, and you got to hear their team chat during the game for random snippets. So it was an interesting perspective, like you said. But obviously, it didn't necessarily bring in too much insight of what was going on. It was just more like seeing how they actually did. And I think you nailed it when you said these people have practiced and lived together and played together so much. You kind of just almost are on the same wavelength when it comes to a lot of decisions.
I think that would actually be really cool as like a post-game thing. Like if whoever is listening to obviously with the team chats going on and says, oh man, this is actually really cool, like the way they verbalized what was going on and whatnot, and then you like cut back to that after the fact, right? And you go back and say, oh, this is when this part of the game was happening, this is what they were talking about. To give you maybe that sort of game sense instead of just like, I really hope they say something cool here, guys, because we just cut off the casters. But yeah, it was definitely neat to see, and of course, we've seen a lot of stuff enter the Dota 2 client based on what studios and producers have done to try and make their brand appealing. And so it's nice to see that MLG is like trying something new and trying a different way to look at the game, because obviously that has potential to feed into how everybody gets to view the game.
Like you said, I agree. We could make that more useful. Exactly. Maybe have someone like analyze it and exactly take snippets of like, or like after a game, and say like, oh, okay, and remember we go back to this fight and leading up to it, this team ganking in, this is what they were kind of going through, and you know, like something like that would be a lot more useful than, like you said, like randomly turning on, just hoping to God that they're not like saying racist, homophobic slurs or something. Like, who knows what they're actually going to turn on. Like, hey, we're back, and that was not what you wanted to hear. But, like, you know, against these Asian teams, who knows what some of these players are saying. I'm just saying, just let's keep it to their team chat for now.
But yeah, it was definitely a great production. It was great having Gods and LD casting, especially in the finals. It was definitely an entertaining tournament, and of course, let's look at this best of 3, Jay, because I think it was weird when the first time I watched them through, it was sort of like on my other monitor, and I was like doing something else. I'm like, oh, this is kind of boring. There's not a whole lot going on in these games for the most part. There seem to be like long periods of farming or passivity, teams sort of moving around each other, dancing around between DK and speed gaming. But when you go back and watch through these games and you look at them closely, and you look at some of the decisions that were just being made, this best of 3 to me is almost more interesting than some of the more flamboyant ones, just because of the number of individual choices that were made that just made me go, huh, that's interesting. We'll definitely talk about some of those, especially in game number 1. But what did you have any just like real general thoughts about this best 3? What did you like about it? What stood out about it to you?
I probably have 3 big notes here. And this might ruin the rest of your direction, but that's fine.
It's okay.
Hand of Midas. The 4 things, sorry. Hand of Midas. Forcestaff. Marana.
Oh.
And boring.
Boring. Oh.
No, that really only applies to one of the games, in my opinion. Is really boring. But I think the first 3 were really kind of, maybe not even the third as much. I just wanted to put the Marana in there because it's definitely something to talk about. But I don't know. I think Hand of Midas and the Forcestaff are the kings of the 3 games for sure.
Yeah, one I think really good, and then the other one really not so good. I took account of the Hand of Midases throughout the games. Game number 1 had 5. Game number 2 had 7. 7 hands
of 10 heroes, right? So,
and then game number 3 had 4, I believe. And we've talked about this a couple times, so not to beat a dead horse, but the thing that I found really interesting about how this wound up working was that you would have one team win a team fight. They'd wipe the enemy team, they'd kill 4, maybe 3, and then you'd see 2 Midases pop up. And then the game would go on for another 5 or 10 minutes, and then there'd be a swing in the other direction, and then that team would buy Midases, and then the game would swing in the other direction. And I can't really say that the Midases are why, but it's interesting that, we've talked about it before of like, if you're getting the Hand of Midas, you're obviously not trying to win anytime soon. And I'm curious to see what kind of choices these teams could have made to go for items that would have helped them just end the game there instead of investing in these Midases. Obviously, a lot of these Midases wind up coming in on support heroes. Earthshaker gets one of the early ones, and obviously in that case it winds up paying off in the long run, and we'll talk more about that for sure. But just comparing the way that Lanm built the Shaker to like how I know I've seen Puppy do it before, where he does go for like the Necro book so that they have that tool to try and push with. I just wonder how much of the sort of topsy-turvy was due to the mass amounts of Midases.
Yeah, well, I mean, DK is a team. I mean, this is kind of been a theme for a lot, is the high Midas, but DK has been kind of known as a team that is not necessarily looking to end things anytime soon. They have Burning as their carry, their farmer, and obviously he prides himself on his farming and his ability to get a nice 6-slotted hero before anyone else in the game. And, they'll throw him on generally a hero that'll benefit the most from it. For example, first game Lone Druid, who can get 12 slotted if he really would prefer to, which, no, we still haven't seen yet, thank God, because that'd probably be a 3-hour game, but we haven't seen that happen yet. I know, right? But he goes these heroes that are just devastating with the farm, and so, like I said, I feel like that's why maybe they're, like, the supports on this team and everything going around it are going to get this Hand of Midas because they're expecting to go late game. They're not expecting to win anytime soon. Although it's ironic when you look at this draft coming out in the first game, it's a push team. It's clearly a push team. It's a way to get into their base, take out the buildings, and win the game with it. Yet they, well, obviously being, I believe it was the longest game of the 3, a lot of struggling involved in that strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of interesting in just that you had, especially for DK, you wind up having a Pugna on the team. And Pugna, of course, is really strong early. He's good for trying to siege the high ground, particularly because he can just drop the Nether Blast. But even when you wind up going the Aghanim Scepter, his effectiveness is somewhat limited. I feel like towards the end of the game, your Decrepify is almost like what you're there for. He's falling off the amount of damage you're doing, but they were buying the Midases, which were obviously postponing their ability to fight. He was able to do some good damage with the Drain, and there were some Decrepifies that actually set up some clockwork hook shots. So it was just interesting to see that they were trying to pick this hero that's so good early and then put that together with a bunch of Midases.
Yeah, No, it definitely and it ended up to where this is. By the way, I don't know why I say it anymore, but it's gonna be spoilers. You're gonna know who wins MLG at the end of this, so in case you didn't catch that already. But yeah, this is they did pull out that win, but it was after 85 minutes, so hour 25 into this, and they were trying to push the base since probably like the 35-40 minute mark. They were trying to go high ground, and just having so many issues. It's just the fact that you look at Speed Gaming's lineup. I mean, they had Kunkka clearing waves within pretty much one cleave. You can do it, and then once you get engaged in that team fight, OD pumping out too much damage. The bear was too squishy later in the game that he couldn't tank enough damage for them to push the tower down. It was just too quick for them, and it just took way too long. But if you listen to the game, LD and Gods were saying, Lanm MVP.
Lanm did some work. He wound up playing the Earthshaker, and this is something that I definitely wanted to talk about because not so long ago I went on a little monologue about how I didn't enjoy seeing Shaker because most of the time it's for the gimmick purpose.
Right.
Shaker gets played in this game from the onset to be able to try and get early kills in an aggressive tri lane, which wound up being up against a solo Eternal Envy for the most part. Sitting out on the side, trying to lay down fissures, trying to cut off Doom's retreat. Unfortunately, they block themselves on the trees a couple times. They're not able to really generate a ton of kills on there in that bottom lane. But Earthshaker here really just did an insane amount of work, and especially at the 64-minute mark, Lanm actually he buys himself a Midas and then is able to transition that into items such as the Lincoln Sphere, Refresher, Blink Dagger, and there was actually up on Reddit there is a post called Crouching Earthshaker Hidden Lanm by the Numbers, and it was submitted by Merrick Pie, where he actually goes through and looks at the combat log and the amount of damage that Lanm is actually able to put out. We'll go ahead and link this on our Facebook and in the show notes of the video. But basically, the bottom line is that between being able to 5-man fissure to drop an Echo Slam directly on top of a creep wave and 3 heroes to be able to put out the aftershock damage as well. Within that combo, he's able to deal 53% of the Radiant team's health by himself. He is able to completely destroy Lich. 100% of his health is dealt to him in damage. 77% of Kunkka's health, 83% of Wind Ranger's health, and I was just thrilled to see it.
Yeah, I mean, the Refresher was just something I would never expect Earthshaker to do, because I only think about it in terms of Echo Slam, which isn't the only real way you should be looking at it. Fissure is a valuable spell that you really can't discount. Getting 2 fissures in, that's a long-range stun. It's a good stun. And it's just more aftershock damage. In general, it actually really played off. In late game, the creeps are going to die, so they're not going to help you the second time around. But those heroes will probably still be up for that second Echo Slam, and they're still going to put out a lot of damage. And it really, really did help out for their total overall damage, like you said. And the fact that one hero does 53% in probably the time span of about 7 to 8 seconds, maybe it's 10 seconds, but even 10 at the most, is absurd. And it's a support hero on top of that. So, he was a farm support hero at this point because of that Hand of Midas and all the other assists he's been getting. But, the fact that he can play it out just really proved that he's not a gimmicky hero, that he can do all these kind of things given the right circumstances, and he really had them. That fight that Reddit post is describing is really one of the big turning points of the game for them, because they were really on their back heels getting pushed in, and it kind of was looking really bad for them, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Lanm pulls out this amazing maneuver, and they turn around and get to start pushing the other base.
Yeah, it was really nice to see, and like you said, that's something that, you think of maybe as like a super luxury item, but, I guess thanks to the Midas, he was able to get that, and I guess, if you want to look at it the other way around, would Lanm be able to do that much, have that big of an impact if he didn't get the Midas? I guess we'll never really know, but, the bottom line is it was like a really great case for like why Shaker is a viable pick He's this hero that's been getting small buffs over time. So it was really great to see. But the other thing that you mentioned that I wanted to talk about too was when you were talking about how DK had a hard time breaching that base, in part because of Lone Druid, who actually did pretty good that game, I'd say. He had some extra harassment put on him in the middle lane. You actually get to see Burning play this Lone Druid middle right after Dendy playing Lone Druid middle and losing to DK. He winds up doing it, gets a Radiance up on the Bear.
Mm-hmm.
Bear pretty much gets shut down this game.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that was really part of what slowed down DK so much. What really did it, though, was just the fact that, like you said, OD was able to pump out so much damage onto a Bear that didn't have a lot of defensive items, but also the fact that Eternal Envy just consciously focuses at that Lone Druid Bear. They have Lich on the team, so they already have the Frost Armor. Eternal Envy decides to eat one of the Ogre Magi, or one of the Ogre Mages, I guess you would call them, to get the Frost Shield as well, keeps it for the entire game, and then dooms the Lone Druid Bear on multiple occasions in team fights to stop the root and the BK popping.
I know. It was absurd. I even, was making notes about that as well, about, how many dooms is this Bear going to get? I mean, it's the fact that it can be resummoned just shows how important that EE thought it was. That he's like, okay, if we get this Bear dead, that's going to turn the fight around. And sure enough, the Bear did have pretty much all of the items. So, granted, it was definitely like taking out Lone Druid the hero himself, if you take that out, and he's obviously the hard carry. So, essentially, right, that should limit their damage substantially, since Pugna late game, you kind of went into it, but he's really only going to be life draining, and he's going to be decrepifying people, and that's about it. He's not going to be contributing that much more. So, definitely an interesting choice, but it just it didn't really pay off, especially, Dooms could have probably been better used on other heroes. If they could have ever got, which would have been hard, but if he could have gotten one on a Shaker or something, that probably would have been way more valuable. Little Howley known that Lanm would be such a beast in the game, but and I even also want to note 41 armor he had on Doom with all that stuff combined. Doom, which is the reason, if you guys don't get that, why that's really funny. Doom is one of the lowest armor heroes in the game. He starts with, I believe, literally 0 or 1. It's not much, and it doesn't get much better. So the fact that he ends the game around 41 armor is extremely absurd and quite ridiculous.
Yeah, it was interesting that Doom winds up just going super tanky and winds up just having to soak up enough damage that OD is able to really, pump it out. He really just had to sort of stand in the middle and be utility and defense, and the lockdown on the Bear. I mean, I just thought it was interesting. You look in some of those fights, and it's just after you take out the Bear, there really just wasn't a whole lot of course, physical damage to come out from DK. There really just wasn't anything dependable that they could look to get damage out of. And, to Burning's credit, he actually, at one point before he loses his Bear, he's able to trade the Radiance back to his hero, so he at least doesn't lose all of the effectiveness. So kudos for Burning to have the presence of mind to do that. But it was just so interesting to say that you're going to focus down this Bear. And, it almost worked out, right?
Almost. Another thing I really think is really cool, that kind of has been a theme, and actually not just as best of 3, but in general pro games, is Crystal Maiden just becoming, well, we know she's been getting more popular, but it's the way she's been being used. With the Frostbite on neutral creeps to get the early levels and experience, it's actually made me want to play Crystal Maiden. It's it feels that powerful that I just can't believe we're just starting to see it now. The whole Frostbite neutral. I mean, it's not like that's been really a change anytime recently. It's just the fact that I guess Teams for a while just didn't like her enough that they really wanted her to even be around. But for whatever reason now, they're all of a sudden really interested in getting her and getting her valuable. And she obviously scales throughout the game pretty decently. I mean, late game she won't be as effective as other ones, but she could still pump out good damage and has a CC. So I feel I don't know. I really like seeing her used in that way. It really is cool to see.
Yeah, and Crystal Maiden is like one of these heroes that I actually really sort of like getting the Midas on as far as a support hero is concerned, just because she benefits so much from the levels, and it really helps her to, stay at a reasonable level, just because of the arcane aura and of course the freezing field, the amount of damage that's able to put out. So just the fact that she can do that and sort of sit in the jungle and get some experience that way, it's actually really nice and can help you get up to that Midas quickly. She's been a support that I feel like has been a part of the metagame for a while. She had a period of time where she wasn't necessarily, but she's had so many different sort of phases, so many different ways to be built, different combinations to be utilized in, and it's really neat to sort of see her, like you were saying, now being able to do this, to sit in the jungle, get gold that way, and sort of played in an additional way to the already numerous ways that she had been played and built in the past.
Mm-hmm.
The other support hero that I thought had a really interesting build in this game was Aui's Lich, who actually winds up getting for his items a Rod of Atos, a Heaven's Halberd, a Veil of Discord. Really interesting item choices. I don't think you see the Veil of Discords super often on Liches in the professional scene, but I know it's a favorite of one of our friends. But the Heaven's Halberd and then the Rod of Atos I thought were really interesting choices, and I was wondering what your thoughts were on those.
The Rod of Atos, I don't really get it on Lich. I guess it's nice for a tanky item for support to get. Like, we kind of discussed that previously about how it's affordable, and you can get each individual piece relatively simply, especially mid-late game with the Vit booster and the staffs. But I mean, obviously he's a slow machine with his ultimate and his Nova, and his armor. I mean, everything he pretty much does slows people down. So I guess it's just another way. It's a good range. It's a good slow too. So I'm not terribly upset with it. The Veil on this team seems a bit questionable. Now it does help, and I think the main reason he got it is to assist with the OD ult, because the OD, a huge AoE ult, and he got a refresher, which we see a lot of ODs do nowadays, is they do eventually go that refresher late game, and so getting a double ult on a Veil team is huge. And so I believe it was that, because you look at the rest of the team. Kunkka obviously going to be all physical, really, except for the boat. The Doom is not really pumping out much magic damage, every now and then a little bit. And then the Wind Ranger, no, that's not too much. So it really was for I believe the OD ults and maybe the Lich ult as well. But I'm really not upset with it. It's an affordable item, and it's easy to use too. It's a great range and a great AoE, so it's not like it's hard to apply it. So I think it honestly is a good choice.
Yeah, I mean, the Rod of Atos is an item that I would like to see more. I think it's sort of a strange item, because the benefit of it is really, like you said, it's a little bit of health, it's some int, who doesn't like that? It has a 1200 range slow, and I think that's really what is so dramatic about it. 4 seconds, 60% movement speed slow. But like you said, it's being built in this hero that already has a lot of slows. The casters, LD and Gods, they sort of point out, it's like, oh, it's an additional slow to try and deal with the bear. It's yet another thing that you can sort of focus towards the bear to make him completely useless, really. If he's not able to stay on top of people to bash them, he's really not going to do a whole lot with the Radiance Burn. The Heaven's Halberd, I think, is always a great choice on supports, just because it's tankability and the disarm. And yeah, I mean, like you said, the Veil, it's like, it wasn't a huge deal in this, but it sort of almost contrasts to me in Game 3, where you actually see Venomancer picked up by DK, who winds up getting an Aghanim Scepter, which is almost like, aside, if you look at the damage numbers, it's like if you have almost any other source of magic damage, it makes more sense to get the Veil of Discord than the Aghanim Scepter. But Venomancer winds up getting the Aghanims, which for me is, like I was saying, mostly I feel like for the cooldown reduction at that point. I don't.
And the general stats, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
But it's, well, I mean, if you want to jump over to that now, I mean, it basically, the whole Venomancer thing in Game 3, it was a Venomancer was played mid by Mushi, and it was really successful early on, needless to say. Against OD, it was really well done. The reason I say that, it's not like he dominated. But OD had to deal with all these maxed out wards. It really started getting strong when he got around level 6 or 7, when he got the wards maxed out, because it took OD, maybe 6 hits or 5 to 6 hits to kill each one. He couldn't keep up with them, and he was able to keep pressure on the lane the entire time. So OD was really on his back foot trying to farm and, not get his tower pushed. So, one of the few that actually can do well against OD relatively, and since the ward is so inexpensive, even when he's on the lower int levels, he can still be pumping them out and have no issues with getting his farm, getting his harass in. So I did like it early on, but that's what Venomancer in a farming role is. It's early on, and when you get to the later stages, and which is why I find it weird, because this is DK we're talking about. Like DK, who gets a gyrocopter for late game. So why are you going this great early mid-game hero when you know what you're doing late game? It just felt kind of conflicting to me there.
Yeah, I mean, I think at that point he was a decent enough choice to go up against OD, and I almost wonder if the Venomancer pick sort of got shoehorned into having to be in that middle position.
True.
I mean, he winds up getting items that wind up helping the team, obviously, like you were saying, towards the mid and the late game, gets the mech up for the team, gets the Aghanim Scepter, so he's able to do a good amount of damage in the mid game and fight often with the cooldown reduction. Gets himself the Hand of Midas, so he's levels up to stay prevalent. The Venomancer one, I'm almost like,
Gotta stack up that poison, dog.
I sort of like it. I still can't decide. Like, I've done it a couple times. I'm just like, I don't know.
It's like a weird Warlock Midas in that sense. Like, you're not getting it to really auto-attack kill people. You're getting it to get your levels. Bigger items better and levels up. Yeah.
It still feels wonky to me. I don't know. I can't shake it. But, he does get himself in a decent position for the mid-game. But, of course, you compare that to, like, what, Speed Gaming were able to get out of their middle lane. Obviously, it was much more effective. OD was able to get a lot more farm, especially in the very beginning. The Venomancer was. So that was another choice that I sort of liked, that and picking the Venomancer to be in that middle lane, because he is one of those heroes that doesn't necessarily lose to OD. He doesn't win, but he doesn't really lose that terribly. Like you said, though, it's like you have to pair that with a late game gyrocopter. Does that really fit?
And you're talking about the shoehorn thing. I'm kind of curious if that's what happened, because their first 3 picks were Visage, Alchemist, and Veno. When you look at those 3, you're thinking, okay, they're going to give Burning the Alchemist. He's going to farm up a storm, and the Visage Veno could tri-lane it or roam or something. That could be pretty powerful. But then they go Bounty Hunter Gyros the last 2 picks, so the Alchemist actually ends up being support. And I'm sorry, but I'm not a fan of the Alchemist support. I know you like the concept, but I don't know. I feel like there's probably better out there. But he didn't do terrible. It really didn't. It's a hero that could possibly help you late game. When we talk about supports who late game just completely fall off, Alchemist is not one of them, because he's got the great AoE from Midas Armor, the great stun, and Goblin's Greed eventually, if he decides to level it, he could get some farm in the jungle late game and help his team out. And knowing these teams going Hand of Midas and crap, well, he's a good candidate for it. So, I guess I like him in that sense, but the way that it kind of started out looked like that was a tri-lane they developed, and then they kind of just went a whole different direction in those last 2 picks and said, oh no, Bounty Hunter Gyro now, and then Mushi's kind of maybe shoehorned into that pick. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but the Alchemist being in the support role is an interesting one too, because this is another sort of interesting item decision that we get to see, and that will help us move into the Eternal Envy Clinks, which is of course going to be fun to talk about. Mm-hmm. But the Blink Dagger up in the Alchemist, being able to get him in on top of people to drop the stun, I like it in theory. It's something that a long time ago I actually was really interested in, and everybody doubted and hated, but here it is on the main stage. But it didn't seem to be all that super effective, and we talk about how Grievous Greed would help a transition in the late game, and I feel like we never really got to see that take off. We never really got to see Alchemist get into like a really great spot for the later part of the game.
Yeah, the Alchemist, the item build, it definitely came out to be pretty interesting. But and I did like the Blink in that situation. Obviously, a carry Alchemist is a whole different animal, so you're not gonna probably see Blinks coming out on that one per se. But for what he was being used, which is like kind of like a utility one, right? It definitely made a lot more sense in that department. But yeah, Isama, let's start breaking down his clinks, because it was nasty. It really was a nasty thing, and his build, I'm seeing in pubs now, like just non-stop clinks going this build. So let's just say, first of all, Hand of Midas is is well, who would have guessed, right? Who would have thunk? I know the shock is just out there. He does get that. I've never seen it before. What a crazy thing. He also gets the Soul Ring very early, so he can feel free to spam out his spells as well as his ultimate, the most important thing. Constantly farming away like a madman, getting the treads up, and then obviously he's eventually going to get an Orchid, but not necessarily the next item. This is where it kind of changed up, especially in Game 3, where he goes that Blink right after those first 3 items, and decides that positioning more important than silence and extra damage.
Yeah, he gets the Blink in Game 2 as well, correct?
Mm-hmm. But just later. He gets the Orchid first in Game 2.
Yeah, I found this to be really interesting, and I'll be honest, I hadn't seen it before. I know when I talked to some other people, they're like, "Oh yeah, Clink's Blink Dagger, totally."
Totally, Ranged Hero.
Totally. I hadn't seen it a ton. It obviously, I think, makes sense.
Oh yeah.
When you see it in these games, it's not something you necessarily think of right off the bat. But this is sort of like it's the solution for the problem that you sort of run into with Clink sometimes. Is sometimes you wind up spending too much time running around. You look for the pick off, you don't find it, or you find a target that you think you can kill, and they walk away. You're not able to kill them, and you've just wasted all this time. And the Blink Dagger was really great insurance against that, because that's sort of like the nice combination of that with Strafe is you're just doing way too much damage with Strafe and Searing Arrows. Like, you probably have the damage advantage.
And once you get that day Dallas, forget it.
Oh yeah, but once, like, no one's gonna really be able to stand and fight you when you're under the effects of Strafe and Searing Arrows, and so, of course, the natural reaction is like, oh, F this, run away, try to get away. So you're going to be able to blink after them and sort of chase them down if you don't have the Skeleton Walk available, or you want to be able to do it instantaneously. And that's something that Envy really did a good job with. And then, of course, using the fact that you're invisible to give you the opportunity to get the cooldown on Blink Dagger off so that you can then blink away or blink in. It was a really great series to see this build for Clinks that you really don't even get to see that often, and just employed beautifully, almost like the Lanm Shaker thing. Like, if you're like me and you're like, oh, that's weird, I don't like this, I don't know what's going on, and then you get to see this really great example of it, you go, wow, alright, this is actually pretty legit. Of course, if they throw both games because of Blink Clinks, you start to wonder, was that really the right choice? But just the way that Envy was able to utilize it was glorious. And of course, it played such a huge role in that Game 3, in being able to blink into the base, to burst down a Rax, and then get sent home by Chen. Really, I feel like the next big thing, I'm not going to say that everybody is going to be doing it now, but like the Chen combination that sort of is going to stand out predominantly in my mind now that you can't do the Chen Pudge thing. Now I'm thinking, oh man, Chen Clinks, this could be legit.
Well, it's not at all the same thing at all, but it definitely it is very cheeky play, to say the least. And you need a very farmed Clinks to make it really work out, because it was very situationally done well. I don't think they picked Chen for that strategy. I think it just ended up being a really great way for them to kind of close out the game. And the Blink Clinks, I have to agree completely. It's something I would not have thought about at all on that hero, because I'm like, oh, he can get close to him with Ghost Walk. I mean, he's going to be fine. He's going to get his initiation, but how many times I saw in fights where he would blink to their back line if he was out of position and just start killing 2 or 3 shotting, supports and all sorts of squishy targets, because all the squishy targets in the back. We know that very well. So the fact that he can just get behind them and just do his strafe, his Searing Arrows, and kill them before they can even react is brilliant. And he's also never the only damage dealer. He's one of 2 usually of really high damage dealers. So Game 2 they had the Mirana, as well as the Timbersaw. Frankly, they had tons of big damage sources that were also being, trying to focus down. And then in the game 3, they had the OD, who was just putting out massive damage. And OD is always the scariest one that you just have to kill as soon as you can. And the fact that, they would try to go on him because he's visible, because he's right there in the open. And the fact that actually game 3, which is why I honestly believe they won, was their initiation. Speed Gaming is brilliant at initiation, especially against DK. How many times Burning, and maybe he was just tired, I don't know what was happening. They were 3 hours or plus into these games, but he just kept getting caught by Forcestaff Hex every single fight. OD getting the jump on them, Arteezy A-God, however you want to call him after this thing. And the Hex, the fact that he can't BKB, he's always dead before he can even get out. And another detrimental, which this is going to kind of tie around to the Forcestaff talk, but the fact that Speed Gaming going, well, in that game, actually 4 Forcestaffs, you compare it to the 1 Forcestaff on DK. If your teammate gets hexed out, Forcestaff's really your only other option. And they didn't have enough to support his getting caught outness, if that's a word. So it is now.
I think so.
It is nowadays. I made it one. So do you think Forcestaff's had a big role in this?
Yeah. I'd like to say first that maybe almost on the back of things you don't really appreciate until you get to see how awesome they are. Arteezy did spectacular this series. He might get his letter god status here. Like you were saying, the A god as they were starting to call him. Yeah. He just did work this whole series, and it was really great to see because I feel like, at least for me, if you're like, oh, name mid players, Arteezy probably isn't at the head of the list for me. But after seeing these games and just really how well he was able to do, I was really impressed. But to go on with what you were saying for the staves, I think that's really the biggest thing to take away from these games was how much the force staves were prioritized and how effectively they were used and how much it actually changed in the games. I have different notes for the games of where people were just saved by Forcestaff, or almost saved, particularly when Eternal Envy's trying to run away from Roche, goes invis, is able to blink away, and then almost gets Forcestaff to safety. Chen's trying to run with him to try and keep him alive, doesn't work. So Chen has to try and split. Forcestaffs himself over a cliff, gets himself to safety. That's one of those things, when we were talking about before, when you're like, oh, where's a place that you can really go to look to hone your game or take it to the next level? Forcestaff is one of those items, and the fact that it's picked up so many different times across these games, having one on half of the players in a game, clearly it's not necessarily just for your support or your any lane. Obviously, Clockwork and OD and the supports, there were so many different heroes that were like, you know what, this utility item is so powerful that we should just try to get multiples of them, and they showed you exactly why that is important. Even the chain force staffing, getting people just way far away was awesome.
Yeah, Speed Gaming, like I said, they're all about positioning. That's how they won their team fights. They caught people off guard. The blink with Isama coming in there and doing his massive damage. They just really knew how to position well, and that's why they won this series. The game 1 really could have went either way. It really, late game, just came down to Lanm being a god and just some couple key mistakes they made throughout the game. But they could have won that game for sure. They were in a good position to do so. They had the better late game in both our opinions, I'm sure. But the fact is they just couldn't get enough on the trades that they made. Game 2, they lost because they gave Mirana to Sing Sing. I'm sorry, that's just it. And then, okay, maybe a little more than that, but I love seeing Sing Sing on Mirana. He is a beast with that hero. And Mirana's just a fun hero to play, but also to see in games. And, it's one of those heroes I think we talked about probably decades of episodes ago. And I can actually say that because we have freaking 60 plus. But the fact that, I know, it's a little pat in the back there. But, when you talk about Mirana and, being able to hit people, at LAN events, Mirana just gets that much better. Because you don't have the lag to deal with this arrow now. Now you can really time it excellently. And despite you think pros having good reaction time, if you're coming out from the fog or somewhere, And now these heroes, especially with reduced night vision, I mean, it's really going to be a matter of getting hit by arrows a lot more frequently. And even if you don't hit the arrow, late game, she'll do enough damage, she'll bring enough to the team fight, and that ultimate can be devastating depending on how you use it. So I really like to see her, and she got banned the other 2 games, so clearly on the top of their priority.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely glad that Mirana's gotten to a point where she's strong enough to be picked competitively, and of course, like, you know, her damage has been getting ramped up and whatnot. And like you said, one of the sort of like side effects of the sort of normalization of a lot of the generic stats for heroes, like the night vision, like you're saying, is that heroes like Mirana sort of, you know, get a little bit better, and you know, you have the increase of gank potential because, you know, some of these popular heroes don't see as well as at night. So I definitely enjoyed seeing that. There's another neat stat that I just wanted to point out randomly, was just that in game number 2, 3 of the 4 first bans were heroes that were played in the first game. So it's almost like when we talked about at the International 3, where in the finals the sort of standard metagame picks went out the window a little bit, and it really was about sort of respect banning these heroes that were getting used really well, or that you expected the other team to use really well. This sort of series, the only standard ban that there was really in the first 4 was the Elder Titan, who's banned out every single game.
The Elder Titan still obviously on the minds of these teams, just too powerful, too much bringing to the table, great AoE synergy with any comp. We've talked about him a lot, so you should have a good sense now why he's still getting banned out in these fights, or I'm sorry, these games. But all around, I mean, besides that, there were, like you said, the respect bans like the Mirana, like some of the Nyx Assassin. I feel like some of these other things that they just didn't want to see the other team pick up. Yeah, I don't know. All around, though, I mean, I'd say a good series to watch. You still should, despite the games being longer. Feel free to skip around at times when it just starts slowing down majorly, but definitely a good thing to know. And I definitely feel like, I mean, if you haven't been watching speed gaming play, you should have been already, because they've always been a very fun, exciting team to watch. Eternal Envy leads that team very well, but they all really communicate well. And that was without the Bone 7. Like they said, they even, I believe they put a 7 in the fronts of all their names just to say, like, they, you know, in signal for him, that they were doing it for him. But Arteezy just doing such a great job, like you said, stepping in as a backup. And it was kind of the underdog story, if you will, because they did so poorly in the group stages the first day, and then they came back winning 5 in a row, getting them away to the grand final and cleaning up against DK of all teams. These team that seems like it was crafted from, like, the reaches of the globe, like, let's just put together a dream team and see what happens, and that's pretty much DK is. And they obviously still have a lot of work to do to get their synergies in line, because there's different languages, different barriers perhaps, but at the end of the day, they showed their stuff too. They're a very impressive team, and it was a very close match, which is really exciting.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you know, like we said, it wasn't like the most exciting of games to watch all the time. There definitely were, like, the nail-biting moments. There are some slower spots you can.
You want to talk about exciting? Navi,
yes,
against DK. Did you get to watch?
I
linked
on
our Facebook the gyrocopter with. There's also a link there too. If you click it, it shows a little 2-minute segment with Havorst ends up getting 3 Divine Rapiers towards the end of the game. Silly, ludicrous, and I think he said, when your team is noobs, you have to carry, or something along the lines of that. Of course, Havorst would say something like that, because he's so cocky. But, you know, at the end of the day, it was just hilarious. Gyrocopter or Divines, what are you going to do at the end of the day?
My favorite part of that picture is that it's just so blatantly cut and pasted, like someone took 15 seconds, they saw that, and they're like, oh my god, Google attack chopper, Havorst, Divine Rapier, and then they took 12 seconds with paint to just, like, make it work. It was glorious. It was glorious. I'm so glad that was made a thing.
Me too, believe me.
But yeah, MLG Columbus obviously all wrapped up. Congratulations to Speed Gaming. I know I plugged the last Star Ladder ticket a whole bunch, but I actually bought the new one too. You get a nice little Weaver sticker. Lol.
Yay!
Skin even. You get a nice Weaver skin. And really, you look at the lineup of the teams that are participating in this Starladder season, they're all awesome. You're going to know most of them pretty much off the bat. So definitely, go ahead and buy that one. I'm sure we'll find a way to talk about some of the games that come up in that tournament. And yeah, it's definitely a good time to watch some Dota. Plenty of good games going on out there, and of course, it's always a good time to play. So you guys can check us out on our Facebook, facebook.com/Dota On Demand. You can check out our YouTube channel here live on the Twitch, and of course, to all you lovely people downloading the audio on Stitcher and iTunes. Always a pleasure to have you. Again, it's the Thanksgiving season here in the United States, and we are thankful that all of you guys tune in to listen every week. We will see you next time.